Hello everyone and welcome to another of my videos, and in this video I intend to help with the understanding of the index function used in Microsoft Excel. In this video we're going to be looking at what the index function does by definition. We're going to look at some of the arguments of the index function, in other words the inputs that goes into the index function so as to return desired value. And also we'll be looking at how the function works, looking at some examples, and we'll be looking at broader examples to help ram the understanding of the index function in our minds. Well, let's start and see what the index function does by its definition. The index function returns a value from within a table or a range based on the referenced row and column of that range or the range. Now let's break it in pieces so that we could really understand what this definition is trying to tell us. First, the index function returns a value from a table or a range of cells. So if we have a table, a range of cells, and we want to look up a value, return it to a different cell, the index function will help us in doing this. The index function will return a value based on the referenced row and or column. Now if you don't understand this, we're going to understand it with the examples we're going to be taking on. But just understand that we have to make a reference to a row or a column or both of them in order to get a desired value returned to us. Let's look at the arguments, or rather the inputs, that the index function takes. The index function, as you can see here, has three arguments. It requires an array, it requires a row number, and it requires a column number. Now I want you to look at them very well. You can see that in implementing the index function we have an equal to sign, the function name, which is index, and open bracket. Then we have the array. There is a comma separating that from the row number that is required, and another comma, and then we have the column number. One thing you would observe about the column number is that it's got square brackets before and after it. What does this mean? Well, this actually means that the column number can be optional, and we'll see situations where this can be optional. Actually, the row or column number can be optional in certain situations. For example, here I help you to understand that you can omit row number if the array is on one row, but you must provide a column number. So in this case, you have just one row containing all the cells in which you want the lookup function to go into look out for values. And since it's just one row, there's really no need. It's optional for you to start to state the row number, because by default it understands that you've selected one row and it's going to return values from just that one row. But it's the other way around. For example, you can omit the column number if the array is on just one column, but you must provide a row number so that it returns. So actually what the index function does is that it tries to look into the interval of a row and column and then picks out the value referenced thereof. Let's understand it with some examples. Here I have an array or a range of cells, 3 of them. They are in one row, but each cell constitutes a column, so it's a range with one row and 3 columns. So here I want to return any of these names based on a column number that I give to this input cell. So the value it's going to return would be here. Let's put in the index function and see what comes of it. Index, and we open a bracket and the array. Notice that as we do this, you see array is bold here, showing that we're still working on it. As soon as I put a comma, it bolds the roll number, telling me it's the next thing I have to enter. But notice what we said, we're dealing with just one row here, so I could afford to omit a roll number. It makes no difference if you put the roll number 1 in there, it's still going to return what you want. But this time I want to omit it. But in omitting it does not mean I'm going to omit the comma. I'm going to put a comma there, showing that we have omitted the roll number. And for the column number, I'm going to reference this cell. I'm only referencing this cell so that we could see the different numbers we could enter, so that it returns the desired column reference. Otherwise, we could just come in here and put any of those numbers. But like you know, especially those of us who do modeling, it is advised that we have a visible cell that inputs could be made in order to return desired value. So we're going to reference this cell for now, and we can close the bracket and hit our enter button. By default, the index function has returned the first value in this array, but I could go in there and enter the number 2, hit my enter button. So you see it has brought the value in the second column in this one row range of cells. And you can guess what will happen when we enter 3 inside. It's going to return the third value, which is in the third column of this row. So here you can see how we implement it using just a column number and returning values corresponding to the referenced column. Now let's look at the second example. Here we have what we can call a table. It's got a table header and it's got values beneath it, and you can see that I have 2 columns here, and we have 3 rows here, 3 rows here, 2 columns, 3 rows. So our intention is to provide a row number and a column number and see what it returns here. So that's exactly what we're going to do. So we're going to enter the index function here, index, and we're going to refer to the array. You can always take all the values beneath the table headers. It's not necessary that you select the table headers, but if you do, you should know that this table will now have 4 rows rather than 3 rows. So it only looks at the range that we have selected, and then it used that to compute or identify how many columns and how many rows are within that range. So we're going to put a comma. So we've satisfied that. We need the row number, so we're going to refer to this cell. So our row number, comma, and then we need the column number. Then we can close the bracket, hit our enter button. Here we have no value showing, simply because we've nothing in this 2. So we're going to do, let's enter for the row number, we enter 1. And you can see that already gives me the value x, because in row 1 I have the value x, and by default the column is looking at the first column. But if we say no, we want the value from the second column, and that is where we get 3.5 here. It's in the first row, row 1, and it is in the second column, which is row 2. So just imagine if we have a 3 here, and you can guess what would come off as the return value. It's going to be 1.8. The reason why, it's in the third row in our selected range of cells, and it's in the second column. So that's why we have this here. Now it should also interest you to note that we can also have we can also do the same thing, because these are products. We might choose, we don't want to return product numbers, we just want to return prices. And of course we can do that. It's simply index, and we're going to take just this range, this column. So we now have one column, and you know the implication of this. It simply means that I could I could choose not to include a column number in my index formula. And so we've selected the range. What is the role? We're going to go in here, and then a comma. And this time around we don't need a comma now, because the last input or argument is column number, so we don't need it. We just put a bracket and hit our enter button. So I'm going to put row 3 here, and then you can see that it's returning what is in the third row in our selected range of cells. And you know what we'll call, when we put 2, it gives us 2.4, and put 1 there, row 1, it gives us 3.5. Now let's look at yet other examples. These are examples that you could meet with in your workplaces. We have scenarios here. So you have these scenario here. What is it all about? We have different VAT rates, and these correspond to what you have here, 1, 2, 3. They are VAT rates, and we've got this, let's call it a quote, and we need a VAT amount here. But what if the VAT amount changes? Maybe VAT is 5%, 7%, 10%. What would be the payments with regards to this quote? That's what we're trying to achieve. So we're going to use the index function here, index. Index, and we're going to our range of cells. We take this range of cells, and you can see that it occupies one row. So I'm not going to have a row input, so I put another comma, and then for the column I'm going to take this cell here and close my bracket. And so we don't get any value until we start entering numbers. And so I'm going to enter 1, and what we see is that it's the applied rate. The applied rate here is 5%. The applied rate is 5%, and if we put 2, it's going to return what is in the second column, and it's going to give us 7, and we're able to see what the payments will be. And if it's 3, you know what that will be. So that's what's going to give us, and we get a rate for the quote that we have here. So you could start appreciating what the index function does. Here I have I've created a drop down button that has got all these values 1 to 5, because we have 5 scenarios here. What would be the inflation? What if inflation is any of these values here? If the inflation rate is becoming any of these values, what would be revenue over time? So if you look at it very well, inflation is assumed to be 0 here, and so price is flat. Price is not increasing, quantity is increasing anyway, and then we see what revenues are. But we're looking at the situation if inflation rate, the average inflation rate over time, is any of these values here, what would be revenue? So what we've done here is that we have referenced these other cells back to the cell that we want to initially have the inflation rate. So all of them are looking back to this cell. So we put our index function here. Take our range of cells, a comma, it's on one row, so we can omit the row number, and then for the column we just click this cell and then close it and hit our enter button. So by default we have 5 coming in, and that's the first value greater than 0 that's showing there. So if we have 2 there, we're going to have same 5, because 5 is the second the value in the second column of our selected range. And then we could have 3 and it changes, 3 and 4 and then 5, any of this. It's not really difficult to do this. If you've not done it, you might have seen it in some other tutorials. Just your data tab, and from your data tab you go to data validation and you select data validation again and choose from this place, you choose list, and here as you click here you can select the range here, and then you hit your OK button. So that way you're going to get all these values there, and so you could have a drop down like this that could take you into any of the scenarios that you have here. Now, in summary, what are we trying to say? We're looking at the index function, and we've seen that the index function takes 3 inputs: an array, a row number, and a column number. I want you to have this in your mind. It's very, very important, because I hope to be doing a future video on the use of index and the match function as a replacement for VLOOKUP. But here I want you to have these things in your mind, that the index function requires a row number and a column number, so that over time you come to understand what role the match function plays within the index formula, and to see how it is a better replacement for VLOOKUP. That's very important. So this tutorial is a prerequisite for understanding my other video on index match. So I want you to look out for that video, and definitely you will benefit from it. So I hope you've learned something from this video, and I hope to be with you in yet another video. Thank you very much.